Observe the mountain. It speaks no words, yet commands reverence from all who behold it. The oak tree offers no explanations for its strength, yet stands as a testament to endurance. Nature's most powerful forces, the depths of the ocean, the vastness of space, the steady progression of time, operate in profound silence. So too must we learn that silence is not the absence of power, but the presence of it in its purest form. Today, I'm breaking down the 5 fundamental reasons why silence commands more respect than words ever could. These aren't just philosophical concepts. These are practical truths that you can implement immediately to transform how others perceive and respond to you. The first and most fundamental reason silence commands respect is that it demonstrates the highest form of masculine power, self-control. Any fool can react. Any child can have an emotional outburst. Any weak man can let his feelings dictate his words. But it takes a true warrior to master his own impulses. Throughout human evolution, the alpha male wasn't the one making the most noise. That was usually a sign of insecurity or desperation. The true leader was the one who remained calm under pressure, who could assess a situation without immediately reacting, who had such command over himself that others naturally looked to him for direction. When you choose silence in the face of provocation, you're demonstrating something profound. You're not controlled by external circumstances. You're not a puppet dancing to someone else's strings. You're a man who chooses his responses rather than being driven by his reactions. I remember reading about a Navy SEAL who was captured during a mission. His captors tried everything to break him: physical torture, psychological manipulation, constant interrogation. But he understood something they didn't. His silence was his strength. Every word they wanted from him was a victory for them and a defeat for him. His refusal to speak wasn't just following protocol, it was an assertion of power. In your daily life, this translates to every interaction where someone is trying to get a reaction out of you. When your boss unfairly criticizes you in a meeting, when someone insults you on social media, when a woman tests your emotional stability, your first instinct might be to defend yourself immediately. But the strong male figure understands that this immediate reaction is exactly what they're looking for. Your silence in these moments isn't passive. It's the most active thing you can do. It's you saying, "I decide when and how I respond. You don't have that power over me." Think about the last time someone tried to provoke you into an argument. Maybe they questioned your competence, insulted your character, or challenged your decisions. Your immediate emotional response was probably anger, hurt, or the desire to set the record straight. These are natural human reactions. But what separated you from every other man in that situation was what you chose to do with those feelings. The weak man immediately externalizes these emotions through words, lashing out, defending, explaining. But the strong man feels the emotions, acknowledges them internally, and then chooses his response strategically. Sometimes that response is silence, sometimes it's a measured reply, but it's always a choice, not a reaction. This self-control extends beyond just conflict situations. It applies to every moment when you feel the urge to speak without purpose, when someone makes a joke and you want to one-up them, when there's a pause in conversation and you feel compelled to fill it, when you have an opinion about something and feel like everyone needs to hear it immediately. The man with true self-control recognizes these impulses and chooses whether to act on them. He understands that not every thought needs to be voiced. Not every opinion needs to be shared. Not every pause needs to be filled. This restraint isn't about suppressing yourself. It's about being intentional with your energy and your words. The second reason silence commands respect is perhaps the most strategic. It acts as a mirror that reveals the true nature of everyone around you. Your silence creates space for others to fill, and how they fill that space tells you everything you need to know about who they really are. Most men are so busy talking, so focused on making their own points, so concerned with being heard, that they miss the invaluable information that comes from simply watching and listening. When you remain silent in a group conversation, fascinating things happen. The insecure people feel compelled to fill the quiet space, often revealing their anxieties and weaknesses. The manipulative people will try to draw you out, showing their need to control the interaction. The wise people will be comfortable with the silence, recognizing it as space for reflection. The guilty will interpret your silence as judgment and become defensive. I learned this lesson during salary negotiations early in my career. Instead of immediately responding to offers or counteroffers, I developed the habit of sitting quietly for at least 30 seconds after any number was mentioned. The silence was uncomfortable for the person across from me, but it was incredibly revealing. Some negotiators would immediately start negotiating against themselves, raising their offer before I said a word. Others would begin explaining why the number was fair, revealing their own doubts about it. A few would sit comfortably in the silence, showing they were experienced and confident. That simple practice of strategic silence taught me more about negotiation psychology than any book ever could. In relationships, this principle is equally powerful. When there's conflict with a romantic partner, your instinct might be to immediately explain yourself, to justify your position, to fill the emotional space with words. But if you can remain calm and silent, you'll often discover what the real issue is. People will continue talking to fill the void, and in doing so, they'll move past their surface complaints to reveal their deeper concerns. I once had a girlfriend who was upset about me working late. My initial instinct was to explain why the work was important, to justify my schedule, to defend my priorities. Instead, I remained silent and simply listened. Within 5 minutes, she had moved from complaining about my work schedule to revealing that she felt like she wasn't a priority in my life. That was the real issue, not the work, but her need for reassurance about our relationship. Your silence becomes a diagnostic tool. It helps you identify who's worth your time and energy, who has genuine confidence versus who's just performing, who's secure in themselves versus who needs constant validation. The person who can't handle your silence, who constantly needs you to respond, to validate, to engage, they're revealing their own insecurity and neediness. In professional settings, silence during meetings reveals who has real confidence and who's performing. The people who feel compelled to comment on everything, who can't let any statement pass without adding their perspective, they're showing insecurity. But the people who speak only when they have something meaningful to contribute, they demonstrate real confidence and judgment. The third reason silence commands respect is that it demonstrates you don't need constant external validation to maintain your sense of self-worth. In a world full of men who are desperately seeking approval, attention, and validation through their words, the man who can be comfortable in silence stands out as genuinely confident. Most men today are addicted to validation. They need to be heard, to be acknowledged, to be agreed with. They can't sit in a room without feeling compelled to contribute something to prove their worth. They measure their value by how much they can talk, how clever their comments are, how much attention they can capture. This neediness is repulsive to everyone. Other men, women, potential business partners. It signals insecurity at the deepest level. It broadcasts that your sense of self-worth is dependent on external feedback, which means you're not truly confident in who you are. But when you can sit comfortably in silence, when you don't feel compelled to fill every quiet moment with your voice, when you don't need to prove your intelligence or worth through constant verbal performance, you're demonstrating something incredibly powerful: self-sufficiency. This creates what psychologists call social gravity. People are naturally drawn to those who seem complete within themselves. It's why the most attractive people often seem slightly aloof. They don't appear to need our validation to feel good about themselves. In dating, this principle is absolutely crucial. Women can sense desperation from miles away, and nothing kills attraction faster than a man who clearly needs her validation to feel good about himself. The man who's constantly trying to impress with his words, who can't handle moments of silence without filling them with nervous chatter, who needs constant reassurance. He's showing his insecurity. But the man who can sit comfortably with a woman in silence, who doesn't need to constantly entertain or perform, who seems perfectly content in his own skin, he demonstrates the kind of self-sufficiency that's inherently attractive. He's showing that he's interested in her, but he doesn't need her approval to feel complete. I know a successful entrepreneur who built multiple companies. In meetings, he's famous for sitting quietly while others present their ideas, rarely speaking unless directly asked a question. When I asked him about this approach, he said something profound. I already know what I think. The meeting is for me to learn what others think and to see how they handle the pressure of my attention. His silence wasn't about being antisocial or disengaged. It was about being so secure in his own knowledge and judgment that he didn't need to constantly prove it to others. His presence alone commanded respect because people knew he was listening, evaluating, and would speak when he had something valuable to contribute. This independence from validation transforms every area of your life. In friendships, you stop being the person who always needs to be entertaining or impressive. In professional settings, you stop feeling compelled to comment on everything just to be seen as engaged. In relationships, you stop seeking constant reassurance and instead operate from a place of genuine confidence. The fourth reason silence commands respect is pure economics. Scarcity creates value. In a world where everyone is talking constantly, where every thought is tweeted, where every opinion is shared, your words become worthless if you're constantly producing them. When you speak rarely and purposefully, when you choose quality over quantity, when you make people wait for your thoughts and opinions, you create what economists call scarcity value. Your words become precious because they're rare. Think about the difference between a text message and a handwritten letter. The text is instant, easy, forgettable. Most people receive hundreds of them per day. But that handwritten letter, that took time, thought, effort. It stands out because of its rarity. It carries weight because of its scarcity. Your words should operate on the same principle. When you speak constantly, you're essentially sending text messages with your voice. Cheap, common, easily dismissed. But when you speak rarely and with purpose, every word becomes like that handwritten letter, valuable because it's uncommon, impactful because it's intentional. I know a CEO who built $1 billion company, and he's famous in his industry for speaking exactly 3 times during most board meetings, not because he doesn't have opinions, not because he's not engaged, but because he understands the power of scarcity. When he does speak, the entire room goes silent. Every word is analyzed, discussed, implemented. Compare this to executives who feel compelled to comment on every agenda item, who always have to add their 2 cents, who can't let a moment of silence exist without filling it. Their words have no value because they've flooded the market with them. People tune them out because they know more words are always coming. This principle applies to social media as well. Most men post constantly, every meal, every thought, every activity. Their online presence becomes noise. But the man who posts rarely, who shares only meaningful content, who chooses his digital words carefully, his posts get engagement because people know they're not just mindless content. In relationships, the partner who's constantly declaring their love and devotion has less impact than the one who expresses these feelings rarely but deeply. The scarcity makes the expression more powerful, more memorable, more meaningful. Your silence creates anticipation. It makes people wonder what you're thinking. It builds mystery around your thoughts and opinions. And when you finally do speak, the scarcity of your words makes them more valuable than if you spoke them every day. The fifth reason silence commands respect is that it creates space for true leadership and influence to emerge. Real leaders don't dominate conversations, they elevate them. They don't demand attention, they command it. They don't talk their way into respect. They earn it through their presence and their carefully chosen words. Every great leader throughout history spoke when it mattered and stayed silent when it didn't. They understood that leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the voice that others turn to when it counts. Abraham Lincoln was famous for his long pauses before answering questions, even in heated political debates. His opponents often mistook these pauses for uncertainty or lack of intelligence. They were actually witnessing a master at work, a man who understood that thoughtful silence was more powerful than quick wit. George Washington commanded respect not through eloquent speeches, but through his ability to remain calm and centered in chaos. His contemporaries wrote about how his mere presence could settle disputes and calm tensions. He achieved this through the kind of dignified silence that comes from inner certainty. In modern business, the most effective leaders operate the same way. They don't feel compelled to comment on every issue or have an opinion about every decision. Instead, they save their words for the moments when their input will have the greatest impact. This creates a psychological dynamic where others naturally look to you for direction. When someone has established themselves as selective with their words, when they've demonstrated that they don't speak just to be heard, people start to anticipate their input. I've witnessed this countless times in meetings. There's usually one person who talks constantly, who has an opinion about everything, who fills every silence with their voice. These people think they're showing leadership, but they're actually doing the opposite. They become background noise that others tune out. But then there's always that one person who speaks rarely, but purposefully. When issues are being debated and opinions are flying, they remain quietly attentive. But when a decision needs to be made, when clarity is needed, when the discussion has reached an impasse, that's when they speak. And when they do, the entire room pivots toward their voice. This is leadership through strategic silence, its influence earned through restraint, its authority built on the foundation of careful word choice rather than constant verbalization. Your silence creates anticipation for your words. It builds expectation around your input. It makes others more receptive to your message when you do choose to deliver it. Instead of fighting for attention in a crowded marketplace of voices, you create demand for your perspective through strategic scarcity. Understanding these principles is just the beginning. True transformation requires practical application. Here's how to implement strategic silence in your daily life. Start with self-awareness. For the next week, pay attention to your current speaking patterns. Notice when you feel compelled to speak and ask yourself why. Are you adding value, or are you speaking from insecurity or the need for validation? Practice the pause. Before responding to any question or provocation, count to 3 in your head. This simple practice will break your reflexive response patterns and give you space to choose your words more carefully. Become selective. Start being more selective about which conversations you engage in. Not every comment needs a response. Not every opinion needs to be countered. Practice the power of strategic non-engagement. Master comfortable silence. Learn to be comfortable with silence in social situations. Practice sitting in group conversations without feeling compelled to contribute unless you have something genuinely valuable to add. Gentlemen, the 5 reasons we've covered today aren't just theoretical concepts. They're practical tools for transformation. Self-control demonstrates your mastery over impulses. Revelation uses silence as a mirror to reveal others' true nature. Independence shows you don't need external validation. Scarcity value makes your words more valuable through rarity. Leadership creates space for genuine influence to emerge. In a world full of noise, your silence is your competitive advantage. In a culture of immediate reaction, your thoughtful pause is your power move. The strongest men in history weren't the loudest. They were the ones whose silence spoke volumes about their character, confidence, and strength. Start today. Let your silence become your statement. Let your restraint become your reputation. Let your strategic quiet become the foundation of your authentic masculine power. Silence is a source of great strength. Lao Tzu,